The streetlights flickered. Shadows danced ominously. Sarah hugged her coat tighter, a shiver running down her spine. The night air was heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and distant rain. A dense fog was rolling in, swallowing the city street by street. She quickened her pace, her heels clicking against the pavement. Each step echoed in the stillness, amplifying her unease. The buildings loomed large, their darkened windows like vacant eyes watching her every move. Where was everyone? The silence was broken only by the distant wail of a siren, lost and mournful in the thick night air. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She just wanted to get home, to the safety of her apartment. Her phone buzzed, a notification from the Uber app. Her ride was 2 minutes away. A wave of relief washed over Sarah as a dark car glided to a stop beside her. The driver, a man with a receding hairline and wire-rimmed glasses, leaned over and confirmed her name. His voice was a low murmur, almost lost in the quiet hum of the engine. She sank into the back seat, grateful to be out of the cold and the unsettling emptiness of the streets. The car smelled faintly of pine and old leather, a strangely comforting aroma. As they pulled away from the curb, the fog seemed to cling to the car, obscuring the world outside in a milky haze. Sarah tried to shake off the unease that had settled over her. It was just a ride home, nothing more, but something about the driver's silence, the way he kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead, set her on edge. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by the unsettling darkness of the highway. Sarah's unease morphed into full-blown alarm as she realized they were no longer on the familiar route home. Instead of the brightly lit highway, they were on a narrow road shrouded in darkness. The GPS on her phone, which had been working perfectly moments before, was now a jumble of static. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I think you might be going the wrong way." The driver didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. The only sound was the low hum of the engine and the rhythmic thud of the windshield wipers battling the thickening fog. Sarah's hand went to her purse, her fingers closing around her pepper spray. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Sir," she said again, her voice sharper this time, "this isn't the right way. Please turn around." The driver remained silent, his hand steady on the wheel as he guided the car deeper into the darkness. The silence in the car was deafening. Sarah tried to rationalize the situation, to convince herself that this was just a misunderstanding, a wrong turn. But deep down, a primal fear was taking root. The driver's silence, his unwavering focus on the road ahead, was more terrifying than any words he could have spoken. She glanced at the dashboard, at the glowing numbers on the clock. Time seemed to be moving differently now, each second stretching into an eternity. The fog outside was so thick she could barely see beyond the hood of the car. It was as if they were driving into a void, a place where the normal rules of time and space no longer applied. Sarah's hand tightened around her pepper spray. She had to do something to take control of the situation. But what? She was trapped in a moving car, with a driver who seemed to exist on the periphery of reality, a ghost in the machine. A sudden movement in the rear-view mirror caught Sarah's eye. Her breath hitched in her throat. For the briefest of moments, she could have sworn she saw a figure in the back seat. It was a fleeting glimpse, a wisp of something ethereal and indistinct, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. She turned her head sharply, her heart pounding in her ears, but the back seat was empty. Had she imagined it? A trick of the fog and the dim light? Or was it something more sinister, a manifestation of the fear that was slowly paralyzing her? She risked another glance at the rearview mirror. This time there was no mistaking it. The figure was back, clearer this time, a shadowy silhouette with eyes that seemed to burn with an eerie, otherworldly light. Sarah's blood ran cold. This was no ordinary Uber ride. She was trapped in a nightmare. The driver chose that precise moment to speak, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that seemed to slither from the shadows. "Don't be afraid, Sarah," he said, his eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "We're almost there." Sarah's voice was barely a squeak. "Where are we going? Who are you?" The driver let out a low chuckle, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. He turned his head slightly, and for the first time Sarah saw his face clearly in the dim light of the dashboard. His features were gaunt, almost skeletal, his skin stretched taut over his bones. But it was his eyes that truly terrified her. They were hollow, devoid of life, like two black pits staring into her soul. "You can call me Karen," he said, his voice a hollow echo in the confined space of the car. "And we're going somewhere you can never come back from." Terror lent Sarah a surge of adrenaline. She knew she had to escape, had to get away from this spectral driver and his chilling pronouncements. But how? The car doors were locked, the windows rolled up tight. They were hurtling through the darkness, the fog-choked road, their own personal highway to hell. Her eyes darted around the car's interior, searching for anything at all that could be used as a weapon. Her gaze fell on the heavy maglite flashlight in the door pocket, placed there for emergencies. It was a long shot, but it was all she had. "Let me out of the car," Sarah screamed, her voice raw with terror. "Let me out!" Her words were met with the same chilling silence. Karen, if that was even his real name, continued to drive, his skeletal hands gripping the steering wheel with an unnatural strength. Grasping the maglite, Sarah swung with all her might, aiming for the driver's head. The heavy flashlight connected with a sickening thud. Karen let out a guttural cry, the car swerving violently. Sarah cried out as her body slammed against the door, but she didn't let go of the flashlight. She couldn't. Her life depended on it. They were approaching a sharp bend in the road, the fog swirling around them like a malevolent entity. Sarah knew this was her only chance. As the car careened into the turn, she gathered all her strength and swung the maglite again, this time aiming for the driver's side window. The glass spiderwebbed under the force of the blow, but held. Sarah cried out in frustration, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had to break the window. She had to escape. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, Sarah brought the maglite down on the window again and again, each blow echoing in the small space of the car. The glass finally shattered, sending shards flying inward. Sarah shielded her face as best she could, ignoring the sharp sting of glass shards embedding themselves in her skin. She scrambled through the broken window, ignoring the searing pain in her arms and legs. She tumbled onto the wet asphalt, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. She lay there for a moment, gasping for air, her body trembling uncontrollably. When she finally looked up, the car was gone, vanished into the fog as if it had never been there at all. Sarah was alone, surrounded by the swirling mist and the oppressive silence of the night. Sarah stumbled to her feet, her body aching, her clothes torn and blooded. She didn't know where she was or how she was going to get home, but none of that mattered. She was alive. She had escaped, but the encounter had left an indelible mark on her soul. As she limped down the deserted road, the fog swirling around her like a ghostly shroud, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been touched by something ancient and evil, something that defied explanation. She had looked into the eyes of death itself and lived to tell the tale. The memory of that night, of Karen and his spectral car, would forever haunt her dreams. And she knew, with a chilling certainty, that some rides are best left untaken, some roads best left unexplored. For the world is a stranger, more terrifying place than we can ever truly comprehend.